When I lived in Germany, we had a couple high wind events, and everything there is those kind of clay tile roofs, and they look beautiful, but I didn't realize how easily they came off, like whole sections of roof in the town that I was living in.
Boy, I bet that's dangerous too, right?
Yeah, no, because these were like 3-4 story buildings.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Associate Editor Matt Milham.
Hello.
Kylie Jacques,
Hello.
Design Editor, and producer Carrie Delahanty. Please email us your questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Hey, thank you all for being here today. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
A pleasure.
So I'm going to start right in with some feedback we got from some listeners, and we're always grateful to get some feedback on what we're doing.
Yeah, whether you're yelling at us or telling us we're doing a good job.
Yeah.
At least we know you're out there.
Mm-hmm.
So Doug from Colorado writes, just watched podcast 170, and as always, it was full of interesting info. I strongly agree with the comments about the cost of cabinets. Anytime I watch one of those home improvement shows on TV, I'm astounded by the cost of kitchen remodels. When I built our house, the total cost for materials for cabinets for the kitchen, bathrooms, and large pantry was well under $3,000. These were all stain grade, which meant hardwood, plywood, not MDF. On the other hand, I just got enough done for the CO and then spent many months finishing the rest after moving in. So that's what I was saying, right? Mm-hmm. You can make them cheap, but it's a huge time undertaking, right?
Yeah.
And you
Sweat
had some
equity.
You had some thoughts about cabinetry?
Well, no, just so much just cabinetry specifically, but just kitchen remodels and the range, how much you can spend on it. It's like Matt and I have been kind of trying to figure that out for the design story of his kitchen remodel and what seems, reasonable and how much you want to put into it. And it's just, it really varies is the answer to that.
Yeah. Like, do I want to spend $70,000 to remodel a kitchen in a $250,000 house?
You can't.
Right.
Yeah. You just can't. I mean, you can.
You can, but I mean, that just seems like an insane amount of money to spend on
So what do you think a reasonable sum would be for you?
I don't know. Probably somewhere in the 30,000 range would be okay. But the thing is, like, in order to make that space really effective, I think I do have to expand it out. And so a lot of that is not really
helping the kitchen.
Not really helping the kitchen. It's reordering a lot of the house, basically the entire front portion of the house in order to make the kitchen work with the rest of it.
Have you seen any clever ways to lower the cost of a kitchen remodel?
Yes, there are a couple of stories that I think this listener should check out.
Yeah, and people generally, because I think we're all trying to get the most for our kitchen remodel dollars.
And these two particular links will be in the show notes, but they're very good about pinpointing, high impact, low cost or relatively low cost areas that you can focus on where you can save but still have good,
Can you give us an example?
Right off the top of my head, Patrick, I'd have to do that to me. Let me get back to you.
All right,
but
fair enough.
Cabinets are one. I mean, that's one. This guy did that.
Yeah.
Depending on how much time you want to put into it.
Yeah.
That's where you save money.
And you need tons of space. That's
right.
what I would say. Like, building cabinets takes a lot of room.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Like, just cutting sheets of plywood, you need 24 feet, right? Around your, just to rip plywood to
you
width.
need at least 8 feet behind the table just to be able to break it down, unless you're breaking it down with like a track saw or something like that.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. But you got a note the other day on the bathroom remodel, I think, that we talked about.
Right.
The last time you were on. And that they couldn't do anything with a $10,000 budget or something like that.
Yeah. Well, she lives in the Bay Area, this designer. And
okay, so let's back up. So this is one of the folks who was proposing a design solution for your bathroom.
That's right.
And you said $10,000, and she said, forget it.
She came back with, I can't do anything for less than $75,000.
That's their start. Like, is this for a half bath? This is for a full bath, right?
So how are you going to come up with the $75,000?
I told her to notch it down. Because my house is only worth so much. Like what you're saying, that would be ridiculous.
You're going to have a pit toilet.
So Do you think she's going to come through with something?
I gave her some context and told her where I live and some, tried to point her in a different direction. I said, this is not high end. And it's interesting that she said that because I did give her photographs of the house so she understands the modest scale. And I don't know why she feels that she needs to spend
because that would probably still cost $75,000 in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Right. So she needs to start looking at sources here.
Yeah.
So we just kind of.
Or in the Midwest, right, where stuff is a lot less expensive.
True.
Wow. That's kind of funny. So have you heard from the other two designers yet?
I have not.
Okay.
Still
we're going to keep checking in on that.
Okay.
We got one more letter to read, and then we're going to dive into what you guys have been doing. Okay, so this comes from Andrew. Hey guys, I've been a remodel contractor in Iowa since 2006. I appreciate all you're doing to educate the public on building science and best practices. I really enjoy the podcast, even though it's infuriating at times, and I end up screaming at my phone.
Yeah.
I love honesty.
I had to read this one. I was like, this is awesome. So
Yeah,
I don't know
do
what
that all the time at the radio.
Me
so
too.
I know exactly where he's coming from.
Yes. Hopefully Andrew will give us some examples of things he feels like he needs to yell at us about.
Yeah, and I only listen to oldie stations, so I don't have any reason.
Matt.
Not really.
Stop it. Okay. In episode 170, you read a letter from Paul discussing the lack of demand for skilled trades. I don't see a skilled trades gap. What I do see is a serious lack of, quote, businesses charging what needs to be charged in order to pay their workers a fair wage. There is a great demand for skilled trades at $15 an hour, but ask for a living wage and you're laughed out of the office. I don't have any trouble getting help anytime I need it, but then again, I pay an honest wage. So, there you go.
Yeah.
On a previous episode, someone mentioned loving Formadrain. I think that was me, and I haven't used it.
That's an
It's easy to love it
endorsement.
when you've never seen it.
In a former life, I poured foundations and can tell you that it's a great idea, but in the real world, Formadrain is a disaster. It's brittle and difficult to work with. After it's installed, it's prone to damage throughout the building process and is basically unrepairable. If all goes well and it's properly installed and makes it through the construction process undamaged, it fills up with dirt in record time. We never had callbacks with perforated drain tile or PVC. Formadrain was another story. The constant issues finally made our company stop using it. So, if any of you have had success with Formadrain and like it, maybe you'll write a letter too and tell us what is different.
And they do have a version, I think, that comes with filter fabric, at least
That's
on
what I remember.
the long sections. So, I don't know.
And I will say if the stuff is brittle and easily damaged, it could have been left out in the sun too long, which is something that happens to plastic pipe plumbers have told me, right? If it sits out at the supply yard for 6 months and then you get it on the job site, it is way easier to break it than if it's been protected. So
Makes sense.
I'm speculating, of course, but that never stops me from saying something.
I would tend to believe this guy since he's used it.
Since he's done it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good point, Kylie. Thank you. You've been busy. You've been like doing all kinds of stuff around your house. Tell us what's been
true.
going on.
It's like a zoo over there.
So you're today getting trees trimmed or taken
Yes,
down?
they're there right now as we speak. So
That is a freaking huge tree, sister.
yeah, it's like a historic sycamore. That's actually not the shot of the sycamore. Did you bring the?
I couldn't
the
put them both
girth
in
of
there.
it?
I
Yeah, it's
tried to
okay.
show them both.
All
This
right.
is not the one you're taking down.
No, that's the one I just put in.
Okay.
Hollywood juniper. Yeah.
So what's the problem with the older trees that you're having them limb? Are you having them limbed or removed?
Just limbed.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are 3 trees total that they're working on, and the problem is that my roof is covered in algae, so I'm actually trying to get some sun on my house. And in fact, the siding is also starting to get green.
Yep.
So I need to bake it. I need to get some airflow
on
and-
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I live on a river, so the whole situation is just wet and
Okay.
damp all over. So that brings me to your product. Do you want to recommend that?
Yeah, so I've been regularly updating folks on the spray and forget.
The Spray and Forget podcast. Yeah.
I need to douse my entire house in
Yeah.
that stuff.
So the stuff is working, albeit slowly. I can definitely see a dramatic improvement. It's almost like completely white, the white vinyl siding parts now. I'm impressed.
That's cool.
And it
Yeah.
couldn't be easier, as everyone says. Like, spray it on there and leave it alone.
Yeah.
And it's taken 2 months now, but it is definitely
What's the prediction? How long is it said to take?
I don't
Weeks,
know.
right?
It just
It's at
says.
least
I guess it
says
depends on
we've
the
heard
weather.
weeks. It
That's why they
doesn't.
say forget.
It,
Yeah. Yeah.
You're on fire today.
Yeah.
I know.
Are you worried that your house is going to get really hot now in the summer
No,
if you take
there's
all that
still,
shading away?
No. There's plenty of foliage and cover. Yeah, it's a temporary solution because it'll come back.
So this little tree, the Hollywood juniper, right? So you put that to replace another tree?
Yes, I had transplanted a weeping Norway spruce from another part of the property when I first moved in. It looked so beautiful, and I was so pleased with it. But I'm wondering about the drainage in that spot.
You think it might be too wet?
It might be too wet. So that's the replacement plant. Another evergreen, which also might not like wet feet. So we'll see what happens. But looks nice, huh?
My wife's boss, who's the editor for Fine Gardening, says you need to kill a plant 5 times before you know it. So I never would have guessed gardeners were so dark about their efforts, right? It seems like a very optimistic pursuit, but sometimes stuff just dies.
Well, and it's expensive.
Yeah.
When things die. It's a drag.
Yeah, I'd rather not kill something a few times before I figured out how to make it work. Yeah. And that's not all that's going on at your place.
Got the woodshed.
And our own Rob Watsack is building that, correct?
The ever clever Rob Watsack. Look at that thing. We're going to go finish it today.
I love how simple the design is. I think simple design is where it's at.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I like it. The only thing that I have a question on is about the way that the rafters are connected to those posts, only because like that's a connection that you can't make for decks. But I don't think it matters so much for this. I don't know.
I think you're being overly critical because it is a freaking roof on a woodshed.
I know. That's why I'm like, there's not really any load on that.
No, it's going to be on there.
Yeah.
And those structural screws have load ratings of probably at least 100 pounds each.
That's what I'm saying. It's probably not a problem. But
and what is the plan for the finished roofing? Because in the photo, we only see the rafters, right?
Corrugated metal is the roof, yeah.
Are you buying that locally?
Rob already bought it. I didn't ask him where he got it.
Do you think he put that in his Honda Element?
Yeah, the sheets are not. I mean,
they're
he
like
could fit
39
that. He puts
inches
everything
wide.
in that thing.
I know he does.
He brought all that. No, I guess some of it was delivered, but he brought a lot of stuff.
So I'm a huge fan of metal roofing for many applications. It looks good. It's long lasting. It's pretty resource efficient. But I've had trouble buying it here in southern New England. Like you can go to any home center in northern New England and buy it because it's so common.
He also suggested that I cover my entire rotting plywood shed with corrugated metal.
That's definitely a mod look.
Yeah, and my place is pretty rustic, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. But.
I would not do Galvalume if you're going to do that because it'll blind you.
It was pretty shady. So, yeah.
And this is supposed to be finished today, right?
Yep, we're going to finish it.
And then you're going to start loading with wood?
That's right. I actually brought 3 pieces over there and put it in. And I said, I think it might be a little premature. It looks sort of sad.
Yeah.
So I took them out.
Like putting one chair in a new house. Done.
Yeah.
And you've been in Cooperstown, New York?
Yeah.
Not at the Baseball Hall of Fame?
No. I'm not a big fan of baseball. I think
you mentioned that in a previous
stuff.
podcast.
Yeah, I mention every opportunity I have.
I find it
telling
refreshing.
random strangers, I don't like baseball. What about you?
You find it boring?
There's just, I don't.
Right up there with golf.
Yeah, I mean, they can't play in the rain. It's like golf. I mean, they're not sports; they're games.
Yeah,
like you can't play Scrabble in the rain.
I think you can.
You probably could with
I think you could. An umbrella.
Yeah.
Anything that you can drink and smoke while doing is not a sport in my book.
Yeah.
Who's smoking while playing baseball?
Daily.
I'm thinking golf.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see an outfielder with the butt.
Yeah.
I'll be right with you.
Probably wouldn't hurt him. But
so
yeah,
what
anyway,
were you doing in
I was up there.
Cooperstown?
Yeah, these guys, Simple Integrity, they were building a steel stringer walnut tread stair for this high performance house, and they look really neat. If there is a picture there somewhere.
Oh wow, that
Yeah,
looks
there
great.
he's just kind of cleaning it up because
God, that walnut is amazing.
Yeah, they had a local mill kind of laminate these things together, and they're like almost 4-inch thick treads.
What people don't
they look
realize
great.
is it's tough to get big dimension walnut, either in thickness or in width, because the best logs are made into veneers for European cars' dashboards.
Yeah. Yeah, so
and
these,
Japanese cars, too.
Yeah, so just to get all the mill marks and everything, they had to plane everything down to, I think, about 3 5/8 inches. But, it was like 4-inch roughly to begin. But they look great.
They look amazing.
And the whole staircase, the floor here, anybody who's looking at it, is
Is
a
it
concrete
linoleum?
floor. Oh. And then they stained it with an acid stain. So,
Is it blue?
Yeah, it's like a blue and black.
You know that is the most expensive concrete stain?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it is.
You should have seen Matt taking photographs of this guy's work. He was welding the
Just
stringers. Yeah. And he was wearing a welding mask, and he's just blind shooting, literally.
Yeah, you can't see anything through the welding mask while you're trying to.
So I'm taking pictures of
shoot
Matt
pictures.
while he's taking pictures of the welding.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was
So how'd
pretty
you
wild.
do that?
Well, yeah, you kind of just.
Aim.
Yeah, I tried to get everything set up before he starts welding.
Does
and
the-
then as soon
does-
as I see he's going to do it, I drop my hood and start shooting. And
Does the welding arc affect the exposure of the photograph?
it doesn't too much. The strobes flash so bright. I mean, they blow out basically the sun. Like
Yeah.
if there's any sun coming into
Yeah.
a building, a lot of times you can make it look like it's dark outside because
Right.
the strobes are so bright. And it doesn't totally
We should tell
overpower
folks what
that.
strobes are. So
Yeah.
we use these high-powered flashlights
Yeah.
that are powered by a power pack. Those of you listening all the time might remember me talking about me blowing one up.
Yeah.
But they're on stands, and they make like what amounts to a bolt of lightning.
Yeah. And so that you can't see the detail of what's going on in the weld because that's still,
It's
as bright
drowning
as the
it
sun.
out.
But the rest of it, yeah, it lights it pretty nicely.
Matt and I thought we'd gone blind on that shoot.
Yeah, but I got so close, and I don't understand how I didn't get my hands burned. But the lens of my camera, fortunately, I have a filter on the front
To
and
protect the
to
glass.
protect the glass because the filter's like $90 and the glass is like $2,000.
Sure.
And the filter is just like completely pockmarked with molten metal,
Cool.
formerly molten metal. Now it's cool. But I was like, I thought it would just, like glass is pretty,
Tough.
pretty tough. I thought maybe it would just kind of like land on it, and I could kind of flick it off. Nope, it melted right in. Wow. Yep.
So you used that presumably for the rest of the shoot. Did it leave
Yeah.
lots of artifacts in the images?
I don't think so. I was definitely looking and trying to minimize that as much as possible, and
Scrape them off when you could.
Yeah, unfortunately, Bill, I think, is going to have a little bit of work to do. But I did change filters for when he wasn't welding. So those shots were basically just while he was welding.
Yes.
And it's a messy job anyway.
For those folks who are curious, Bill is the gentleman who works for the Taunton Press who fixes all our bad photographs. It is his entire job to make things look better, which is why Taunton products are beautiful. It's not because we take the best photos. It's because we have the best photo editing.
I rely heavily on him.
He is a
Master.
brilliant man.
Yeah, he's a master.
We should have him on the show sometime.
I was
kinda
saying the other
shy.
day that I'd like to sit at his elbow
And watch what he does.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just want to learn what he does.
It's true. Should we get to some questions?
Sure.
So this comes from Adam. Hi,
Careful.
Hi, FHB podcast. Longtime listener of Fine Woodworking who recently found the FHB podcast, which is fantastic, he says.
With enthusiasm.
I've been scouring past episodes looking for conversations about roofing and insulation. I'd say he's got to look harder because I think that might be one of our most common subjects, right? The southern Indiana house that I've lived in for a decade was built in 1936. It's a unique, small, two-story brick house with a detached three-car garage connected by a breezeway. It has beams from an old church in the living room ceiling. The first floor has steel floor joists, which I've never seen in a home. I remodeled the house when I bought it, though we never did much to the garage, which we use as a workshop. The roofing on the home garage and breezeway has needed replacement for years. We are finally being forced to bite the bullet as the shingles have started to crumble and it's leaking where the breezeway ties into the house. We've considered insulating the garage many times, but a contractor friend told that there is not enough vent in the eaves to allow for airflow from the soffit along the roof and out through the ridge vent. If we did. Recently, I heard you discussing using rigid foam insulation on the roof, but haven't seen this done before in practice, which brings me to my question. Is rigid foam insulation on the roof a good idea for our situation like ours, where we're needing a new roof anyway, and since there is zero insulation to be found in the house or garage already? If so, is it a common enough practice that I should be able to find roofers in my area familiar with how to do it? Or if I decided to get some friends together to replace the roof ourselves, which would satisfy my DIY soul, what are the high-level steps to proper installation of the rigid foam insulation? Thanks in advance for any great advice. I think he's being a
Assuming,
little...
assuming that we're going to give him an answer that's useful.
In the meantime, I'll be in the library searching FHB books and magazines. Well, thanks for the kind words, Adam. I think exterior insulation is a wonderful solution for this particular problem.
It can be. You got to close up those vents, though, because otherwise you're not insulating.
And otherwise you have an insulated roof over nothing.
Right.
Didn't you just recently do an Ask the Experts about this very thing?
I can't remember.
It was like a roof retrofit with rigid insulation. Do you remember
Maybe?
that?
No, I don't.
There's a link.
Okay.
I'll provide it.
So Kylie is doing her homework. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like Matt suggests is you got to make an envelope. You have to make an air barrier throughout the house. And then if you insulate the attic, that conditioned air will stay in the building. Otherwise, the unconditioned air is just going to be taking the place of the conditioned air.
Yeah.
So,
but it's totally possible.
How about for the next part?
The details of how to do it?
Well, let's do this one first. Is it a common enough practice that I should be able to find roofers in my area familiar with how to do this? And I'm going to say absolutely not.
I'm going to say no.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I think Martin Holliday or another green building advisor contributor surveyed and tried to find a roofing company that would do this kind of retrofit, and it is very difficult. They're just not trained in this kind of practice. Even though commercial roofs often have exterior insulation, it is not moved into the residential sector in any appreciable manner. So you're going to have to spearhead this yourself or find a good contractor who's known as I'd say a green or environmentally responsible builder that can handle this kind of retrofit.
Yeah, somebody who does like deep energy retrofits, you might be able to
Carrie,
search
can we
for
look
that
at their
term.
roof for a sec? I think the overhead shot, if we can get it. Yeah, so this seems like a perfect roof for outsolation because there's very little complexity and there's few penetrations. So I think this would be an ideal candidate. But the problem when doing this is you also have to resolve the overhangs, right? Because now your roof is several inches thicker than it used to be. And how do you make that look appropriate?
I never thought about that. So what would you suggest?
So
Deeper fascia?
deeper fascia, or most roofs of this era or have what amounts to overhanging rafters and then a return back to the building that forms the soffit. So in many cases, it's a good idea to remove the existing soffit, and then you only have the rafter and the additional thickness to hide. You don't have the super thick soffit too. So
Yeah, that would look strange.
it's a tough detail to conquer. Perhaps an easier solution, and one I'm hesitant to suggest because spray foam has some ecological penalties, but spray foam on the underside of a roof deck is a time-tested assembly for this kind of situation.
Yeah.
But you're still going to need a new roof.
What about Shingle Warranty? Should we talk about that?
Go ahead. So,
Well, I don't know that a lot of shingle manufacturers are going to warrant their
A hot
shingles
roof.
on a hot roof. Yeah, on an unventilated roof assembly. So you're probably never going to get that warranty. You're never going to get them to honor that warranty anyway. Probably. So
what do you think? Is that a real concern?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Matt always makes these points, though. But it doesn't really matter.
I don't think it really matters because I think, again, back to Martin, I mean, he's talked about this in the past, at least in the magazine, that in those vented roof assemblies, the air is roughly the temperature of what it would be if it were an unvented roof assembly by the time it's gotten about halfway up that roof.
Yeah.
So, like, the
And this-
shingles at top are getting the same exact temperatures that they would be getting regardless.
And roofs like this, hip roof, and many other roofs, like
Are
don't
poorly
vent,
vented
don't
anyway.
vent anyway.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
why worry about it?
Yep.
Justin likes when I say roof venting is a crock
Why?
As
What
it
does he
is.
think?
because with the right roof and done correctly, it's a pretty forgiving assembly, right? But the roofs that are done right and lend themselves to a vented situation are few and far between. There's lots of stuff in the way. If you have any kind of intersecting gables or hips, like all that roof is difficult to vent or impossible anyway. So
What can you say about that in-core or invent by Cora Vent?
So that's a plastic material that goes on the underside of the sheathing, right, and creates a vent space. That's
Right.
probably a great way to do that. And their product, unlike so many other ways to do that, deals with the soffit area too. It has like a piece of segmented plastic that you can bend to air seal that critical transition between the soffit and the rest of the roof sheathing. So that's a good product. The other thing people do is put foam insulation into the rafter cavities, either to create an airspace or to totally insulate. If you're totally insulating the space with foam you've cut to fit between the rafters, that's a pretty risky assembly because oftentimes there are air leaks that allow moisture-laden interior air to get up to the roof sheathing. So you need to make sure that you have good air barriers if you're contemplating that. You think that's helpful to Adam?
Well,
we didn't get to an assembly.
Right.
What's that?
We didn't get to what the actual assembly would look like.
Oh,
I
you
don't
mean
know if we need to.
for a outsulation on the roof?
Yeah.
The layers.
There's a lot of different layers.
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
you could do. I don't know. I mean, you could do your foam and then put another layer of
sheathing
on top of that.
There's a product called Nail Base, which has the sheathing already attached. That's, once again, comes from the commercial world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you could probably do the same thing with Zip Bar.
Yep. Or Zip Bar and another layer of insulation, right?
Yeah.
You have to use structural screws to connect them to ideally the rafters when you find them.
Yeah. That's probably the sketchiest part for me in all of these sort of like thickened assemblies is
how do you attach them?
How do you attach it
That's
reliably?
a good point.
Yeah.
And these folks are in southern Indiana, which is tornadoes zone. So, I mean, you really need this stuff to be stuck down.
Yeah.
I say do it with your friends and just put some foam down and work out the details later.
Is spray foam insulation under the rafters or under the, to the bottom side, would that be something that a non-professional would want to get into?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, spraying foam is chemistry.
Yeah.
So you need like what amounts to a chemical plant in a trailer or a box truck.
Right.
To keep the chemicals the right temperature and to pump them and to mix them at the nozzle, and definitely takes some know-how. And if you get it wrong, it is a huge problem in terms of human health.
Yeah, and they can recognize guys who do it all the time, or
know when
girls who
it's
do it all
wrong.
the time know, when the stuff's coming out wrong.
They call it off-ratio foam, and it often never hardens, or it's like overly hard and doesn't fully expand and do its job. So you get it wrong, you got to scrape it all out. And as you can imagine, that's loads of fun. So Joseph from Southern California writes, I like the idea of zip sheathing for many reasons, but it bothers me that the primary method of sealing the joints, the tape, leaves you unable to shingle the layers to ensure bulk water is running correctly. Why don't they just sell a product that leaves 4 or 6 inch of the waterproofing layer proud or overhang the sheet so it will work naturally as flashing? You could easily use their liquid flashing product to air seal the joints in combination with this. Now that is a great idea. Why doesn't Zip have a little flap of flashing on it?
Because the layer is basically paint. I think that's why.
I think that's why too.
Yeah, I don't know how you would manufacture that and ship it because the edges of these panels are frequently damaged or at least subject to damage because they're on the outside of the
right.
Of the stack.
And this would be hanging out even further and flimsier.
Right.
There's no reason you couldn't use a Z flashing to transition between your panel products and then tape over that.
Or you could build with Advantech, which already has a
but that's a tongue and groove.
profile.
It doesn't really flash.
No, it doesn't. But what he's worried about is sort of like the reverse lap, essentially, that you're getting with the tape, it sounds like, right?
I think he's worried about the tape coming unglued, and then you have a fish mouth that catches water and directs it into the sheathing layer.
Yeah. So, I mean, Advantech doesn't completely get away from that possibility, but having that tongue and groove profile would
you think would prevent water from coming in?
It would be less risky.
I'd like to see some testing on that.
Yeah.
We could build up a test wall out in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And living in Southern California, it seems that most builders here treat many of the energy efficiency products as overkill. The rain we get comes in short spurts and dries quickly, and we get plenty of sun, so those who can afford upgrades tend to opt for solar and continue to let their leaky houses waste energy. And the expensive houses use a simple house wrap with no exterior insulation in 2x4 exterior walls with fiberglass bats. Most older homes have the standard 2 layers of paper with stucco applied directly without sheathing. The roof seems worse, black asphalt shingles and poorly vented attics with poor air sealing between the house and attic. Given the climate, what are the best methods to use? Most of the online research I find are focused on homes in colder climates, and I'm not sure what methods are still well suited for a hot, dry climate. I'm hoping to do a big remodel and addition on my next house and would love to better understand how to get the best value for my climate. Any specific resources I can go for more information would be greatly appreciated. So, what's the difference between building in a hot climate versus a cold climate with regard to insulation and air sealing your envelope?
Doesn't have a lot to do with the order of the layers? What goes on the outside, what goes on the inside?
I would say the reason none of these other builders are doing these things in the climate is because the delta T, the difference between the outside and interior temperature, is way more minimal in a warm climate than a cold, right? In northern New England and the northern Midwest, you could have temperatures 30 or 40 below in the winter, which means if you want your house to be 65 or 70 degrees, you need to come up with
100 degree delta T.
100 degrees of heat.
Yeah.
So that makes like insulation and air sealing is always important, but it makes insulation way more important. Whereas in California, where it might, in Southern California, get up to the 90s or 100 degrees, and you want your interior to be 70, you're only dealing with a 30-degree temperature difference. So insulation just is not that important.
Yeah.
Isn't it as important? So the things still matter, though, are thermal bridging, right? Exterior insulation always makes sense in any climate because you're stopping the transfer or slowing it from the uncomfortable outdoor air to your conditioned space inside. And so I don't think it's silly to put foam on a house in California, but I sure wouldn't put 3 or 4 inches. I think a half inch or an inch would be totally acceptable.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that.
What about the roofs? Black roofs make no sense anywhere, I would say.
I agree with that.
The shingles deteriorate much more quickly because of their temperature.
Right.
Shingle color makes a huge difference.
Why aren't shingles white?
They should be.
They should be.
In many parts of the country, though, ours included, they turn black from algae and mold and pollution. So
I can attest to that.
yeah,
They should all have terracotta roofs there.
they should.
Yeah.
Or metal, right?
Yeah.
Because of the heat and the clay tile and concrete tile, though, are difficult in seismic areas, though, because you have this huge mass of weight. And when the house starts shaking, it's way more damaging than a much lighter roof material, researchers have found.
Yeah. And they will blow off in high
And they
wind.
will blow off, yeah. I'm always amazed at how, mediocre the transitions on clay and concrete tile roofs look. Like, the pieces are held down with, globs of mortar that it just looks so dodgy to me.
Yeah.
I would worry in a high wind event that those things are just going to blow away.
When I lived in Germany, we had a couple of high wind events, and everything there is those kind of clay tile roofs, and they look beautiful. But I didn't realize how easily they came off, like whole sections of roof in the town that I was living in.
Boy, I bet that's dangerous
older
too,
buildings.
right?
Yeah, no, because these were 3-4 story buildings, and these things were just crashing down to the
Holy crap!
ground. It was pretty dramatic.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So what was
Like a war
the fix
zone.
after that?
I don't know. I think they can. I didn't watch the repair. This is when I was in the Army that I was watching all that stuff happen. But I don't know. I saw some blue tarps up there for a while.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yep.
Are blue tarps in Germany different than blue tarps in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's a German shade of blue.
Are they measured in meters?
Yeah.
Those Germans.
So Joseph finally concludes with rain screens, ventilated wall assembly seem like a good fit for any climate, even a hot, dry one, because the air movement provide a cooling effect on the hot climate. I don't think that's been documented, but if you want to believe that, Joseph, I can let you do that. But it seems not to be generally done here because of the fire risk, and that's just it, right? You can't have cavities that would direct flame, right, or move flame, move.
Yeah,
heat and fire.
Yeah, especially if you're
making a big
cladding on the
chimney.
exterior is somewhat fire resistant. It doesn't really matter if those embers are able to get behind it.
Right. So that's why, and it's very dangerous. And there are documents, we'll put them on the podcast webpage that talks about dealing with areas of the country where wildfire is a concern.
I actually reached out to Michael Maines on this.
Okay,
And I'm going to read
He's a smart
to you.
guy.
Yeah, I'm going to read to you what he said.
Okay.
Keep the rain screen gap to 3/8 inch or a half or 3/4 at most, which will limit the spread of fire. Consider fireproof exterior insulation, mineral wool. He always plugs mineral wool. or fire-resistant foil-faced polyiso. Consider non-combustible cladding, and don't vent the rain screen into the roof. Most importantly, talk to your local code official to make sure whatever you're doing is possible. In a warm, dry climate, the gains, energy and otherwise, from a rain screen are probably pretty low, but it would depend on the situation. Yeah. And then he gave this great link to lessons learned from the Great Fire of London, which you might want to read.
I do.
Yeah, it's lengthy, but...
So that was in the 19th century? The Great Fire in London, or are we talking about the more recent apartment fire?
Yeah.
Oh, the Grenfell's Tower disaster. Yeah.
That was a bad scene.
That link comes from Building Science Corps, so it'll be loaded with good information.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor.
Woo.
The Fine Homebuilding podcast is also brought to you by DeckWise. Does your hardwood deck need a makeover? Bring back the luster of the day it was first installed. Let DeckWise reverse time and erase its dullness to make the wood grains burst with natural beauty again. Start with our wood cleaner and brightener, and finish with our eco-friendly water-based formula, Wise Coat, or our low VOC Ipe oil hardwood finish. Protect and preserve your deck to keep it looking brand new this summer. For more info on these products, visit deckwise.com. Okay, this is going to get your dander up, Matt. So our question 3 in the third half of our podcast comes from Henrik. Forgive me, Henrik, if I'm saying that incorrectly.
Henrik.
I
don't know. Henrik?
Henrik?
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay. He didn't give me a phonetic spelling.
Doesn't seem so hard. It's Henrik.
Okay. I just went through the full list of all the podcasts you guys have produced and didn't see one episode on vehicles we builders use to get ourselves and our tools and materials to and from the job site. Is no one concerned with this? I spend on average $600 a month on gas. I put over 20 gallons of fuel into my van twice a week. That means I'm putting something like 250 pounds of CO2 and other pollutants into the atmosphere each week. I find it completely hypocritical to try and build an efficient, energy-efficient structure when I'm spilling all this stuff out of my tailpipe. He doesn't say stuff. But when I search for a sustainable cargo vehicle, I find nothing. You guys there have an opportunity to start a conversation on increasing the demand for a sustainable mode of transporting our tools and materials. Why don't you do so? I have an 8-year-old. I don't doubt you guys have children. Don't you have concerns for our ecological futures? I suspect you are more concerned with pleasing your sponsors, so you have no incentive to start any sort of conversation on the vehicles we use.
You nailed it.
Them's fighting words.
Yeah.
Because no vehicle manufacturers in the U.S. are advertising practical electric vehicles for our industry. I see plenty of ads on FHB for gas guzzlers. How about we work on increasing the demand for an electric alternative? I suppose I already know the answer. If you respond to me at all, it'll be to call me a hippie dreamer or question my manliness. After all, what self-respecting macho hammer-wielding grunt would even think of driving an electric vehicle to a construction site? I just got to wonder if Henrik has ever listened to this show.
I know. Did he listen to the part where I talked extensively about how much I hate American trucks?
And I don't think anyone would consider us hammer-wielding macho grunts.
Certainly not me.
I mean, I want to talk probably the very first paragraph.
You got your dander up right away with this.
Matt
So I'm going to let
did
you
some
go.
extensive research, as he does.
Where he talks about, spewing only 250 pounds of CO2 off 40 gallons of gas or whatever.
Is that true?
He's putting in. He's significantly lower. I mean, his number that he puts there.
So how much is it really?
It's closer to 800 pounds that he's spewing in a week.
Okay.
So, I mean, because you produce almost 20 pounds of carbon dioxide for each gallon of gas. So if he's putting in 40 gallons, 40 times 20 is
That's
800.
not higher math.
Yeah.
Okay. So where do your numbers come from? Because Henrik's going to call us on this for sure.
This is from the U.S. EIA, Energy Information Agency.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Do you think they're trustworthy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, I also looked it up on some chemistry websites.
All right.
And I can
Of course
give you
you do.
all of the information on how to calculate it, but roughly 87% of the weight of a gallon of gas is carbon. And every one of those carbon atoms meshes with 2 oxygen atoms already in the atmosphere to produce carbon dioxide.
Okay.
So
Should I do a chemical diagram here for this?
Oh, we can.
Okay, so
Bumming me
what do you
out,
think
man.
about his point that, like, you know, some people have to drive a truck because of what they do for a living?
I actually applaud him for thinking about it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it is a novelty, right? This is not a. What I found interesting is, so I was like, well, what does a work truck get with regard to mileage? And it used to be that you could go to the window sticker on the web and see immediately, very clearly, quickly, what the miles per gallon is. And that doesn't appear to be the case anymore. So I went, cars are a different story, but when I looked at work trucks specifically, if I would click on the link to the supposed window sticker of a vehicle I was looking at in inventory here in Danbury, you couldn't see the miles per gallon. So you have to go dig deeper. And it is kind of a pain to figure out what they get. And it's not good.
No.
That's why it's buried.
It's totally buried.
Yeah, they don't want you to know how much you're going to be paying for gas on top of your ridiculous truck payment. Yeah.
So that's another point, is they're stupidly expensive compared to what I remember when I got into this business. When I got into this business, you could get a truck for 15 or 20 grand, right? And it wasn't fancy. It had a bench seat. It had a rubber floor. It didn't have air conditioning. It probably had two-wheel drive, but it only cost, 15 or 20 grand. Now they cost 50.
Should get Rob on here and talk about his element and what he can do with that thing.
I could get a lot in my vibe when that was the only vehicle I had.
So I think he makes a good point. So I went looking, and the closest thing I would consider to a real work truck that gets what I would describe as reasonable mileage is the Mercedes Metris cargo van. And it's not a full-size van. It's kind of like in between. It's like a minivan, size, a little bigger perhaps. And the combined rating for that is 22 miles per gallon, which is bad, but not terrible, especially for a vehicle that has to carry stuff, right? And I'm assuming the 22 miles per gallon, and I'm assuming all the figures that I'm going to cite in a little bit come with the vehicle empty. So, of course, it's going to go down if you have full of tools and material or towing. That vehicle has a 2-liter turbocharged engine and 199 cubic feet of cargo space. They have an even cheaper version called I love this. This is so German. The Metris Cargo Worker for $26,500. The other version, the base model, is $30,000.
Yeah.
And most vehicles get far less than that, right? The best performing van I could find was
But I mean, this is his point. Like, that there aren't better cars out there.
Yeah.
Like, we know the mileage sucks for all these things.
Yes. What do we do?
Well, I don't think the technology
EVs.
is quite there yet. I mean, you see all the electric vehicles that are out there are extremely small, extremely light, and they still don't get blow your hair back.
They get 30s
range.
30s, right?
Right. No, that's the thing. A lot of these hybrids or whatever, they get really good mileage, but they don't have really good range a lot of times, especially the electric vehicles. They don't have amazing range.
And they're mostly cars, right?
And they're
mostly
mostly cars. And when you start putting the loads on them that you would have, like hauling around materials
Or even just tools.
like the amount of batteries that you would have to be able to power that thing, it's
You
sort
do.
of like diminishing returns, because you're all of a sudden you're hauling around 2 tons of batteries to run a truck, 200
right,
miles.
to carry a few hundred pounds of stuff.
Yeah.
And you probably have to charge it throughout the day if you're somebody who goes from site to site, right?
Right.
So a Google search I did for most fuel-efficient van came up with this. So Chrysler introduced, I don't know if it was this year or last year, the Pacifica plug-in hybrid, which is a standard-sized minivan, but it's a plug-in hybrid, and it has an electric range of 32 miles. So assuming you weren't going to job sites that were too far away, this could be an option for you. But this is not a work truck. This has got 3 rows of leather seats. This is meant to haul a family, not building materials. But you might be able to order this thing without the seats and make it
Cargo.
into a truck to haul stuff. But
Right.
I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, but I think, in the near term, until those technologies exist, like a lot of it just comes down to like what you're doing personally. Why are you driving a truck to work if you don't need it?
Right.
Yeah.
Get those delivered, get your supplies delivered, plan ahead, make sure that you have everything that you need on site, and don't be making Home Depot runs in the middle of the day.
Right.
And then, when everything's there and you've got your job site trailer there with all of your tools, you're not hauling those back and forth every day, then you drive your Yaris to the job site every day, and you get, that's essentially
or a hybrid or
or whatever,
Yeah.
some higher mileage
or
car,
a
so
cargo bike, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you're close enough, walk.
This is a conversation that has come up in the Taunton Press and on Green Building Advisor. The folks, I believe it was on Martha's Vineyard, what's the name of that company, Matt?
South
Mountain Company did a analysis of their carbon footprint with their workers going to a job site every day, and it is staggering.
Yeah.
It is really staggering because you're talking about 8, 10, 12 people all driving a single vehicle that doesn't get good mileage.
Right. So if you really want to practice what you preach, I mean, and this is a solution that could get really expensive, if you're going a long distance or if your crew's going a long distance for a project, house them on site and just build that cost into your bid. I mean, if somebody's got the money for
like
it.
Like an RV?
Yeah. Well, maybe not an RV, but, like a cheap motel or something like that.
So just stay there.
Yeah. Or tents. I don't know. I don't know what people are willing to put up with. I mean, that's something I would be fine with, but I don't know.
I think that's a lot to ask of somebody who's worked 8 or 10 hours doing carpentry to come and sleep on an air mattress in a tent.
A nice flat, hard surface is probably good for the back.
How much do you think you could do with my Ford Fiesta?
So there's the MPG sticker for the Pacifica Hybrid, and it claims 82 combined miles per gallon, which I think is kind of laughable. But what they're doing is assuming you're going to be using it mostly in the electric mode or often, right? I don't know how those numbers are figured out, but I know it doesn't get 82 miles per gallon.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know how those things work.
It's expensive too, so $42,000 to start. So
yeah. And that's another barrier to entry.
Sure.
Is just the cost. I mean, when you can get a regular minivan for considerably cheaper.
Yes.
Yep.
So, in reference to him describing us as hammer-wielding macho grunts, so what do you drive?
The aforementioned Ford Fiesta.
For those of you who don't know, we'll have a picture of Kylie's Fiesta up on the podcast page, and it's what you might imagine. It's a little tiny 4-door car, right?
Right, and it's as close as I can get to an electric vehicle.
And what did that cost in round numbers?
$16,000.
Let's see, that seems like a good deal to me.
That's why I went with it.
And what are you driving?
My daily driver is a Subaru Impreza.
And it gets 30-something, right?
It gets, in the winter, about 32. In the summer, 36 to 38 miles a gallon. Yeah.
And it
I
has
drive almost all highway.
And it has all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And you can carry tools in the back of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's basically
and you
a little
take that
station
instead
wagon.
of your truck.
And I take that instead of the truck. Yeah, and then besides that, I have that.
And then when you need a
that
truck,
old Vibe, which gets great mileage. That thing gets about 38 miles to the gallon too. But
so you have 3 vehicles.
Yeah,
so you
well,
can't really
that thing
practice
I would
what you
love to.
preach.
No,
he collects.
I collect old cars. No, the main reason I haven't gotten rid of that car is because I drive a lot of miles, and I'm trying to keep some miles off of my sort of daily driver. So hopefully the Vibe will get back on the road again soon. I can't drive it in the winter though.
And so when you need a truck, you have one.
Yeah, I've got basically a full set. I've got a Toyota Tundra, 2003, nice and old.
Yep.
But it gets terrible mileage, maybe 16 to 19, somewhere in there. It's a V6. It's like pretty much the smallest Tundra you could get at the time. And yeah, I haven't even had that truck a year, but I got it. I wouldn't say necessarily out of necessity, but sort of out of necessity, because I can't pick up materials. I can't pick up, compost. I can't go to the dump as I'm like ripping walls and stuff out of my house.
It's
hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And constantly borrowing vehicles from other people just gets really old really fast.
And imagine what it's like for them.
Yeah.
You are that person, right, Patrick?
Yeah. And I didn't want to do that anymore. Neither me nor my fiance wanted to do that anymore. So
that's fair.
So most of my life, I've been a truck person. When I was in high school, my dad bought me an S10 pickup truck that I drove for years, and then I traded that on a Toyota 4-wheel drive pickup truck. I had that for many years, and then I had a family, and it had a standard cab, so you couldn't really put 3 people, especially a car seat, in the front of it. It would have been in front of the gear shift. Mm-hmm. And then I went for a stretch without a pickup truck, and my life was very incomplete. Yeah. It's very hard to build something if you don't have some kind of vehicle to go to the home center, to go to the dump, as you point out. So A few years ago, I bought this Dodge Dakota. This is a 2002. I think I bought it and it had 62,000 miles on it and paid $4,500. So that's why I bought this truck. But like most of them, it gets terrible gas mileage. I don't really keep track of it, but the highway estimate is 18 and the around town is 16, and it has a V6 engine.
Yeah.
But your commute is very short.
I drive 5.5 miles to work, so.
Probably doesn't even get hot enough. You probably got to change your oil like every 2,000 miles.
I change it every 3,000,
Yeah.
and I've had to put a couple exhaust systems on it because they rot out from the condensation. This most recently, I put in a stainless steel exhaust system, so that's working pretty well.
Good.
Yeah. I say cheap trucks are better than expensive trucks.
Yeah. I also paid $4,500 for mine.
Yeah.
But it had like 200,000 miles on it when I bought it.
Like, why are you going to spend all this money on a new truck and then destroy it by putting all kinds of crap in the back of it?
Yeah, that's the thing. I wanted something that already had dents so I don't feel bad when I'm just throwing,
It's very liberating.
all these pieces of this outdoor fireplace that I demolished into it.
Despite its age, though, this truck was in very good condition, and the interior is like still like brand new. So I would.
You can get really good prices on former rental vehicles.
I believe it.
Yeah, I bought one once. That was a good way to go because they'd been maintained and were
Well.
well, supposedly.
Yeah.
It seemed to be.
Yeah.
It lasted a long time.
Yeah.
Henrik, I don't know if we answered your question.
But we do care.
We do agree with you that it is a problem. And I would say, like Matt was suggesting, if you can spend less money on a single vehicle, buy two cheaper ones, one that's a truck, right? And one that's a car that gets decent mileage, and try and use the car whenever you possibly can.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think what I would say is don't come to us to solve the problem that you see. Start your own truck company and make battery-operated trucks. Become the next Elon Musk for trucks.
There's a company in California that's like does conversions on old VW buses and makes them all electric, and then they sell them to hipsters for like $100,000. So that's something else to consider.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they are pretty cool.
You're gonna get rich, Henrik.
And you can thank us later.
Yeah.
Or just send money.
Oh,
Yeah.
incidentally, it's saying that the pages of Fine Homebuilding are filled with truck ads. So
Oh, that's right.
that was another thing I wanted.
Yeah.
So I went looking, and I went back 5 issues, and we have an advertiser index in every issue, so it's very easy to look up whose products are being advertised in the pages. Do you guys want to take a stab at how many ad pages we had dedicated to trucks in 5 issues?
I know.
Because I told you.
Yeah, you told me so.
It's 5. 2-page spreads and a single page ad, all for Dodge.
So an average of 1 per issue.
1 per issue.
Yeah.
And it advertised one of their city vans, the little tiny modern vans that get 20-some miles to the gallon, as much as 28. A normal van, like this guy's probably driving, and a beautiful 4-door dually pickup that I was coveting. I can understand why people want to drive nice trucks too, because I'd rented one and went to Western Pennsylvania, and it was lovely. It was a very nice vehicle, comfortable.
Yeah, they're like luxury cars now.
I don't know how you fit into that little Toyota because I had that same model and I'm 5'5", and I was not comfortable. And I drove to Pennsylvania in that thing. And you're what, 6'1"?
I used to be.
I had an 87 Toyota 4-wheel drive pickup, and I love that thing.
I loved my trucks. I have dreams about that truck still.
Yeah, that truck
It's
was amazing.
very handy. I liked it too.
I had bucket seats, so I didn't even have room for
3.
no room for 3.
What I loved about the 4-wheel drive pickup trucks from Toyota that era is they were came from the factory, lifted, they like amazing ground clearance.
Yep.
The only drawback was it had manual locking hubs, so if you really got into a muddy, disgusting spot, you had to climb
had to get
outside
out.
through the mud to get to the wheels.
Yeah. I spun
had
that
that
truck once in Colorado.
They were squirrely. I spun mine too in snowy conditions.
Yeah, I was just looking for. It started to snow. I was in this canyon. I'm looking for a spot to pull over to lock the hubs. Could not find one, and the truck spun around before, and fortunately landed right in a pull off.
Nice.
Yeah, I got super
I like
lucky.
that visual.
Yeah,
I used to put sand tubes in mine. That helped a lot.
yeah.
That's a good idea. Totally. Okay. Hey guys, thanks for making the podcast. I really enjoy listening on my commute and while I'm in my shop. I've learned a lot. I have a little building experience from living in the Northeast, and I've recently moved to Zone 4 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I converted the 2-car garage to a wood shop. My question is regarding the gas-fired furnace and water heater that are in the garage. I have dust collection, but I'm considering building a sealed closet around them, the appliances, to protect them and to provide adequate combustion air that I'm not breathing. In my search for details online, some people seem not to care about the dust, etc., while others are quite concerned. So what's the concern? Is that dust could ignite, right? If you have enough particulates in the air in an open combustion, you can set it afire, right? This happens in grain elevators and stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was maybe more clogging up the air filters and stuff, but I don't know.
I thought it was about him breathing it in.
Well, so all these things are concerns, right? Yeah. So his solution is to build a closet for these appliances and then try and detail that so it works. Mm-hmm. I've only been able to find one article detailing the construction of this closet with a high-low inlet, and I've attached a link below. I'd like to hear you all weigh in on the construction of the closet, like sizing the inlets and location, and the proximity to the exhaust at the roof, fire breaks at the ceiling, sill seal at the bottom plate, space around the appliances for maintenance access, and maybe what kind of gaskets at the door and threshold. I'm considering doing some finishing in the shop with oil-applied varnishes, shellac, etc., and would like to hear if this enclosure would be able to separate the fumes from the appliances for fire concerns. Sorry, that's probably a lot packed into one question, but hoping you all will take a stab at it, because I don't think I'm the only one facing this kind of question. Well, he says in closing, Ian says in closing, let me know if I'm just totally paranoid. And no, you're not, because especially flammable vapors around heating appliances is a definite no-no.
Right. Yeah, this sounds like a very volatile situation.
I'd move your paint.
Yeah.
My high school shop teacher told me one time of a young man he knew who was cleaning parts in his garage with gasoline and set his family's house on fire because the vapors accumulate and you really don't notice how quickly it's happening. Mm-hmm. So definitely you need to be concerned about that kind of stuff.
Did you look at the drawing on the link that he...
I did.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
I think it's a good idea, generally speaking. And the article we linked to by Allison Bales, I think, is the best description I found of it also. So it describes having combustion air supplied from the outside at two spaces close to the ceiling and close to the floor. Yeah. And it's meant to provide the air that the burner is using without pulling it from the space where your dust and potentially flammable vapors are. The thing where this all falls down is if you have to make this a completely sealed space. Yeah. It has to totally work.
One of the reader comments had said something about the seal at the door bottom.
So you need
hard to do right.
An exterior door like the one you would use to separate your garage from the rest of your living space. And it has weather stripping and a threshold and a sweep, and all these things work together to make it relatively airtight. And then you're going to have to air seal this entire enclosure. You're also going to have to cover it with drywall to protect the framing and whatever from fire. And the cabinets have to be big enough to access the spaces, and that is spelled out both in the IRC and the manufacturer's installation instructions. So you have to get all that right before you even attempt this.
I'd say build another workshop.
Or move the heating appliances out of there if you can, or go to direct vent appliances that don't have any atmospheric combustion, right? They're going to have a pipe that goes to the outside for combustion and a flue pipe that also goes outside for the flue gases. So that's another way to go.
Yep.
And those are a good idea anyway, especially if your heating equipment is old. It makes a lot of sense to upgrade to those when you replace them.
I think for the door, you could get one like they use on a submarine. I think they do a pretty good job of sealing.
Have you seen those in at surplus outlets?
No, but I'm sure if you dug hard enough, you could
sure
find
you've
one.
seen them in Germany.
Probably.
They just use them for doors, right?
Yeah, it's just a standard entry door.
What do you think about this? Is that a reason? Do we give this guy a reasonable?
I think so. Yeah, and the article's pretty involved, and the reader comments were, I think, helpful.
And Allison weighed in on there as
well.
Should
we read a little bit about what Allison says?
Yeah.
The closet must be completely air sealed to the house, as shown above. The door must have weather stripping and a threshold to prevent air leakage between the closet and the house. All penetrations must be air sealed as well. The key is that you have to install air inlets so the furnace or water heater gets the combustion air it needs when it's running. Called high-low vents, one must terminate within a foot of the ceiling and the other within a foot in the floor. The size of the inlets depends on the capacity of the furnace or water heater. There must be 1 square inch for every 4,000 BTUs per hour of input capacity. For example, a 100,000 BTU furnace, which is a pretty standard size, would need 25 square inches of air inlets. So I think that's another mistake people make, is they don't realize how big these vents have to be. So he needs 25 square inches for his furnace alone. He's going to need probably half as much again for the water heater. So, because I think water heaters are 25 to 40,000 BTU burners. So you got to do the math, look on the nameplate of your appliance, and that'll tell you the input BTUs so you can size the vent accordingly.
Yep.
I applaud you, Patrick. That was,
Oh, man.
that was some good info.
This is high stakes, right? You can't
no,
tell
you're right.
people
It's
like
true.
wrong information with
Right,
regard to
right,
this
right.
stuff because it's lives depend on it. Fires are bad. Yeah.
Matt, your face.
Fires are bad. Yes.
I still can't get over this
Drugs are
parents setting the ball field on fire to
Oh,
dry
God.
it.
Oh,
we
my
need
God.
to move on from that. It's too
Yeah.
upsetting.
Have you guys heard any developments with that?
No, I don't think I have. Other than it was apparently just a bunch of parents, and they had, it sounds like, done it in the past as well. So
Of course they did.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, a good idea like that doesn't come out of the thin air.
Yeah, I think two of the coaches maybe were put on like unpaid leave or something
For
as a
letting this
result
happen?
letting it happen,
Unpaved leave.
something like that.
That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, that's not enough.
They should have to clean up the mess.
They should
Yeah,
be
pay
charged
for
the
it.
$50,000.
Well,
cleanup.
or I'd say physically
get
have
out there
to
with a
shovel it
shovel.
out
yeah, but then where do you put it?
in
In
the
their
parents'
backyard.
backyard.
Right.
They all have to put it in their sandboxes. Your kids made this; they have to play in it.
Well, I want to thank you all for being here today, Matt, Kylie, and Carrie, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Keep craft alive and happy building.